Hello everybody, and welcome to another video. Hi! Today, we are going to cover the other part of our digital inking tutorial. This time, it's going to be how to ink in Adobe Illustrator. This is a little bit more technical than it is than the other type of version of inking. Because this time around, we are going to use the program in order to be able to actually make the shapes into a vectorized form of art. If you don't know what vectorized means, it means that you can technically take any piece of artwork that you make within this program and you can scale it up or down without losing any sort of detail within it. So you can make it minuscule and it still retains these really sharp, nice, fine edges. This is the type of artwork that is required when you do a lot of silk screening. Some silk screening, because it's really nice to have all the colors separated perfectly. If you go into stickers, if you go into a lot of print, it's a lot like business cards and stuff like that. It's kind of required. Logos are generally, every single logo should be in vector form. And anything that's going to be into any promotional stuff like bags or jackets or embroidery, everything like that has to be a vectorized form of art. So what we are going to do, eventually we're going to ink this awesome little piece by this artist right here. Okay. Essentially, he allowed me to show the commission that I'm gonna do, and it's just some freelance work that I'm doing, so I'm just taking advantage and actually showing you guys how I go about doing it. But let's get familiar with the tools first. Okay. Essentially, the few things that you're going to require to know how to use in Illustrator. And this, by the way, all this will not be required to have a Wacom or any sort of pressure-sensitive tablet. That's the beauty of Adobe Illustrator. I just literally do it with a mouse. Yeah, just a simple run-of-the-mill mouse with 2 buttons. Okay, that, a keyboard, and a monitor. That's all you need. Okay, so let's get to the different things in Illustrator that you'll need to know so I can actually show you guys the process later on. The first tool that you're going to want to know is your pen tool. The pen tool is kind of cool. It allows you to draw different shapes. So you can either just click and then click again somewhere else and then click somewhere else and eventually close the shape, which will show you a little tiny circle, and then it closes that shape. You can also, if you click and drag, you'll see those little anchors. Those are going to determine if there's going to be a roundness to the actual line. Okay? You can make 2 different types of shapes in Illustrator, and they are determined by these little sections right here. One of them is the fill. A fill is this. A fill would just be a solid shape. That is a fill. Now, the other one, if we switch it, boom, that is a stroke. A stroke is essentially just an outline of whatever you're tracing, right? And you can go in and move all the different points by using your white arrow tool, direct select tool. I like to call it the white arrow tool. Or you can just press A and it selects it. and then you can click on them, move them, you can move the little anchor points, you know, so you can refine your shapes perfectly. Now, you can have both. You can have a fill and a stroke. See? So this allows you to get creative with what you're going to be doing. But for the tutorial right now, we are essentially only going to work with shapes. With shapes and strokes. That's the only thing we're going to need. Okay? So don't worry about combining them. No, it's going to be one or the other. Then the other tool that we're going to need to know is the width tool. And let me show you guys what the width tool does. Let's say we have 3 identical lines, right? And we have the width tool right here, or you can just press Shift W. The width tool allows you to go into different parts of your line and make thick to thin lines with it. So you can get really sharp lines or really like pointy edges. And this is how we're going to get our thick to thin lines. Okay? It's going to be super simple to use. I know it might seem a little bit daunting just from seeing, you know, the possibilities of it, but it's going to be pretty simple. So we're going to play with making shapes. We're going to play with strokes. And you can change the strokes with, and if you have anything that's just an outline, there is a little menu that pops up on the right side and then says weight. This allows you to either make it thicker or make it thinner. Okay? So, essentially, those are going to be the 3 different things that we are going to play with. Super simple, not complicated at all, and I'm going to explain myself as I go along. Hopefully the video, at first it's going to be a little weird for people, because a lot of people are used to actually working in Photoshop and working in a ton of different layers. In Illustrator, I only use 2 layers. I use 1 layer for my template, which is the one where I have the illustration. You can double click it, and then it allows you a couple different options. It gives you the option to make it a template, which dims it to whatever amount that you require. I normally go with like about 35%. So as you can see, it makes it a little bit dimmer. I'm going to make it a little bit less dim because the sketch in itself is kind of mellow looking. Okay, so we have that. And at first, we're just going to worry about digital inking. I'll show you guys how to do the coloring as well, but the coloring is ridiculously simple. So you guys will probably almost laugh at how easy it is. Okay, so now that we have our sketch, we're going to lock it, which happens automatically when you make it into a template. We're going to go into our new layer. We're going to select our pen tool, and then we're just going to start off on a starting point. We'll start right here. Super simple. We'll click on the line we want to start. Since it's going to be a little bit rounded, so we got to click and drag a little bit, and then end it. Seems about a line width of 2 would be good. Then this one, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. And don't worry about getting it perfectly the first time. Because if you mess up, let's say I messed up right there, right? You can always go back to your direct select tool, select the anchors, and then just modify it to where it's perfect. Okay? And then we're just going to do a rough trace of everything. We're not going to add the thick to thins yet. And if it's really large curved areas, you can just, cover it with a very large curve. I like to go by sections. So we're going to do all of this red first. Okay, this is the tricky part. This is going to be something you need to know how to do. Imagine, say, how this little anchor goes all the way out here, but it has to be a really sharp turn. So if I click here, it's going to make it come all the way out here. You can do two things. You can either click Alt, if you're on a PC. I believe it's the Apple key for Macs. And you can just move that one little anchor point close. The closer it is, the smaller the curve. So if you just bring it really close, it'll allow you to just click and drag and make the line follow exactly what you want. Okay. Control Shift A deselects. That's going to be a great shortcut that you're going to want to know, because you're going to use it a lot, especially if you're using a mouse. Okay. All right. There you go. We'll worry about these. Oh, let's just do them right now. Click and drag. Click and drag. Click and drag. Okay? And then click and drag for a curve. Alright, let's do these. Click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, and finish our shape. And then adjust it so it has the nice brownness that we want by moving all those little curves with the direct select tool. Or remember, press A to, not have to go to the menu every single time. Okay. And this is all about getting all the details right. Like in the other video, it was all about like super quick, consistent, confident lines. And trying to get them with, by undoing and redoing and undoing and redoing until you got the perfect line. Well, the beauty of Illustrator is that you don't have to get a perfect line right away. You can just play with it until you get it right. And trust me, the first couple times you might get a little bit stressed out because it does take a while to get used to it. I remember an illustration like this might have taken me a few hours. See how I'm not like worrying about details like that? Like this and here. I'm just trying to get through the whole line first, and then I'll go back and edit. That's right there. Okay, now I can go back with my A tool and edit so it has all the curves that I need. Make sure you realize where lines start and stop. What would be the simplest way to actually make the line without making a trillion different points? The more points you make, the less smooth the line will be. So try to avoid making a curve with a ton of different points. the reason that I'm able to, I already know roughly where the lines should be is because I've done this a trillion times. It'll take a couple, couple hours at least of playing with it before you guys get an idea. Actually, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's gonna take like a few weeks of actually using the program for you to actually get really fast with it. But if your stuff isn't very complicated, it should be like a cakewalk to make it look super clean. Now, if you're trying to ink like a whole comic book, woof, like a kid's book, those might be endeavors that might take a little bit longer. I'm not going to say it's impossible. Nothing's impossible. But, you might want to make sure that you're choosing the right inking method for your art. Sometimes vector inking isn't the best. It's not always the ideal way of inking stuff. Even though I prefer it, I absolutely love it. Because it just makes things look so clean and so smooth. Okay. And when it's actually perfect circles, you can just make a shape with the ellipse tool, or if you leave it pressed, you can make rectangles, rounded rectangles, polygons, stars. But, when it comes down to little shapes like this, well, it's going to have to be a perfect shape. Let's just leave it like that. Okay. If you want to select, for example, if you have like 3 different lines, right? Say you have these, and then we have a different part right here, but we made that one thicker. Let's say you just want to like select, you were working with this type of line and you want to quickly select this thickness. You can just select it, touch anywhere else, and it makes it into that thickness of the line. Instead of having to go every single time like select it and then make it the size that you need it. No, just select the line that you want, or one that you've already used that's similar, click somewhere to deselect, and then it's already that size again. It's little tiny shortcuts like that that will save you so much time. Let's delete these. Let's start here. Seems like a very long line. And I might have to make a video specific, like I'm gonna focus more on the inking for this one, and then I'll make a different video on the coloring. The coloring is so simple, so simple. Like my method of coloring is incredibly simple. Like I don't even say that, like playfully or like just assuming that it's easy for me. No, like it's just so ridiculously easy. You guys are going to laugh when you see it. Once you guys get the hang of a couple tools, and it's not live painting either, by the way. There's this feature called live paint in Illustrator and live tracing and stuff like that. And oh man, like a lot of those tools are they make me cringe because a lot of people use them in the industry and they don't realize what they're doing exactly, so it always ends up looking horrible, like super tacky. Okay, so it's coming along nicely. See, back when I was in college, I struggled a lot with inking in general, mostly because I was never very good with hand inking, like, like traditional comic book inking, because my hand would always hurt. Like, I have a very, 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 very heavy-handed hand when it comes down to my drawing, when it comes down to my inking. So I couldn't ink more than a couple, panels of a storyboard or, a comic book without my hands killing me. Like, I honestly thought that I would develop like some like arthritis or something of the sort because I pressed so hard. Like, I would rip through pages of paper. That's how hard I was pressing, which is not a good thing. So when someone introduced me to Adobe Illustrator, I took to it like no one's business. I did everything on Adobe Illustrator because it started taking my artwork and making it look professional, which that was like the first step. That was like the first time that I actually felt proud of my artwork. And after that point, once I felt that I could create something that other people liked and that was marketable, it got my confidence up, and then I was able to actually go out and do a lot more. I was able to do a lot of different stuff just thanks to actually being able to feel like my artwork was worth something. And if you guys have followed up with the like my story of how I started as an artist, you'll realize that I was not the most confident person. See, in this case, we're going to make little shapes because, actually this one too. It's just going to be a cutout, but I'll show you guys after. We'll work on, let's just work with the strokes first. We'll work on the other tool that you guys are going to have to learn to love, which is called the Pathfinder tool. This little baby right here, Pathfinder. And I'll show you guys what it does in a second, once we're done tracing this. See, as I'm just going super loosely, not trying to create a million points. If I went in and I was like, it would look horrible. Like, you would not get any smoothness to it. Like, it would look very, very, very prevalently vectorized. And that simple, method of just learning how the curves start and stop is what makes the difference between a good vector artist and a shitty vector artist. Alright, right here I do remember the artist told me that they forgot to draw the thumb. And I'm pretty sure it's that hand, because there's only two hands. So I am going to draw a thumb. Make it like that. A little bit more. There you go, so an indication of a thumb. Super simple. But it kind of tangents with this. So I have to move it. I have to make sure tangents don't exist. Tangents take away from the overall design. Looks a little better. But let's bring it in more. There you go. Okay. Let's trace this hand. Shift Control A, guys. Learn to love it. Deselect allows you to go so much faster. Allows you to actually start a new line without having to go and click, menu, select, deselect, or selecting something else to deselect it. Okay. Alright, we are getting pretty close to being done. No, that doesn't look smooth enough. So we start at the endpoint, and then we end at the stress point. There you go. And we'll go in and do all the little highlights in a bit. I'm just doing the ones here because they stick out like a sore thumb. Okay. All right. Let's go in and so I'd like to know from you guys, how am I doing? I would really enjoy some honest feedback. I'm not a very easily, offended person. And I'm doing all these videos essentially to help all you guys and girls, don't want to exclude the girls, that, don't necessarily know how to create digital artwork, and maybe you guys have always wanted to learn, but classes are too expensive. And my ultimate goal is to make it so I can help people without, them having to worry, have them be, let me put it a little bit different. My ultimate goal is to help people learn how to be marketable as artists through the ways that I have learned. Obviously, I am not a fine artist. I don't know how the industry with the fine arts works. I am not a web design person, so I don't know that aspect of the world, of the industry. What I do know is cartooning. What I do know is design. And, that's what worked for me. Well, in this case, I want to make the shape. And perfect time to show something else. Okay, let's say we have this shape, and we want to delete some points. In this case, we want to delete this little area. We can select it, go to your pen tool, and if you have it selected and hover over it, you'll see a plus symbol. If you go over the line, if you click it, it makes a point. If you go over an existing point, there's a negative sign, and if you click it, it deletes it. It removes it. So in this case, we're going to select the point here, select the point at the other end, and then if we go into our white arrow tool, select the extra point and just press delete. It just gets rid of that one point in that little section, and it leaves us with the perfect shape. Oh man, I completely lost track. I have horrible attention span. I was talking about teaching you guys how to do things, how to market yourselves, and how I don't know certain aspects, of the industry, but I do know a bunch of them, especially because I have worked in a ridiculous amount of different jobs, because I get really bored after I learn everything about a certain job. So I remember one of my first jobs was video editing. And it was super cool at first because, I didn't know anything. 2 months later, I had mastered what they had to teach me, and I left because I just didn't see myself learning anything else from them. So I treat real jobs like they would be classes. And I'm not going to say that I'm not like dumb sometimes, because, maybe like the jobs that I have gone through are some people's, ideal jobs, or they're like jobs that other people would love to have. But like I said, my goal is not to just do jobs for doing job's sake. It's to actually learn something from these jobs and then actually apply that to some personal project. My goal has never been to work for a studio. I don't want to make other people rich with my artwork. I want to make myself not necessarily rich, but I want to make myself okay, at least with my artwork. I want to make sure that I can make a living by drawing what I want to draw. And at the end of the day, that's pretty much all you can ask for. Okay, so I'm going to trace his signature after. Now that we have the basic trace, right, what we're going to do, we're just going to unlock the original layer. We're going to select the image, and we're going to make a copy of it. We're going to drag it a little bit to the side. Okay? So we can see it, but it's not going to remove the one that we already have there. Because the reason that I want to do this is so I can see the different thicknesses of the lines or any detail that I'm missing. For example, we're missing these, but I'll show you guys how to do those little details as shapes instead of lines. We haven't traced these highlights as well. I'm going to show you guys how to do that. So for now, we are going to double click this. Let's make this a little bit less dim. Let's change it to about 70 so we can see every intricacy in there. Lock it again. You're going to go back to your lines. And at this point, it seems like every single edge ends at a fine point. So this is where we're going to use our width tool. And the width tool is pretty fun. See, if I just, reduce it on one edge, it just takes the whole consistency of the line and then just thins it out over that point that I did. But we don't want this look. So we just go a little bit past the edge and we just refine it so it matches the line again. Maybe a little bit thicker. A little bit thicker. There you go. Okay, and we do the same thing for this side. And then we go around the whole image. And then at this point we can just go in and fine-tune the details that are missing. Simple, look at these lines, they're not connecting. Undo tool is obviously for any designer. They should know that that's your best friend. Let's see, let's go back here. Yep, same thing. Ends at a fine point, but it's not super thin. Ends at a fine point, thicken it up a little bit past that. Okay, it's looking good, looking good. And obviously you can see right here that some lines are black, some lines are gray. I'm going to show you guys how to do that, how to change that. It's pretty simple. Alright, but let's go around the whole illustration, just refining those thick to thin lines. And obviously if you do have a Wacom tablet, you know, this becomes a little bit easier. Overall it's a little too thick, so let's make this all. There you go. Ignore that. Because you can just select the pen buttons to the different things that you need to do. Let's say that your pen tool could be like one of the buttons could be the deselect button, and then the other one the pen button. So all this just becomes a matter, you don't even have to touch a keyboard at that point. Okay, so this one will be tricky because we have one point that's super thin, and this one has to be super thin too, but if we make it super thin, the line disappears. So you have to go thin on one side, thick in the middle, thick on the edge. Okay? And then you can get away with it. Okay. And now you can start seeing that it looks a little bit better. This is the same way that you would add thick to thin lines. Like if you wanted to add thickness to, like I mentioned it in the other video, if the light is hitting from this side, I mean this is not the type of design that does that, but if light was hitting from this side, then you would have to make the lines on this side a little bit thicker, or if, let's give an example with this. So we have our basic line, maybe light would be a little bit thinner here, but it'd be slightly thicker over here, and then you already have that appearance that it's heavier on this side. Okay? This is more of a graphic style, so you don't have to worry too much about, you know, the lighting within the line work. But if you are inking comics or you're inking a character, that is probably something that you're going to want to take into consideration. Okay, so, and then we just go around the whole character. Super even line work is kind of boring. Make sure that it's consistent, but don't worry about the imperfections. You know, if it's not perfectly the same throughout the whole thing, it's okay. It really is. Because it just adds a little bit of, you know, it makes it a little bit more dynamic, less static. As I've said with like my face videos, and I haven't drawn a bodies video yet, but I will overemphasize the fact that symmetry is completely overrated. Completely and utterly overrated. If you are just aiming to draw like models, you know, from Victoria's Secret, or, you know, just model looking characters, then yeah, I mean, that's all models are. Like, the standard of beauty in the United States, at least, is a symmetrical face, symmetrical features, and overall standard of beauty is just, you know, for guys, muscular, lean, for women, skinny, and voluptuous features, but not too voluptuous, because then you don't, you know, meet the standards. Then you're, you know, plus sized, which is ridiculous. Give me a girl with some meat over a girl that has no meat. But I am Mexican, and I like my curves on my woman. Yeah, standards of beauty are ridiculous. But yet again, I am not like the prettiest guy ever. See, my dad always had this saying that a man doesn't need to be pretty. If a man has charm and charisma, and he can just talk to people, he will always fare better in the long haul than a guy that's just very attractive. Because being hot without anything else going for you, it's kind of bad. It's a sad predicament for those sort of people. So try not to be one of those. Just try not to be one of those. Period. Always try to be somebody interesting. Let's see. I don't even know how we started talking that. But anyways, let's see. We were talking about inking and whatnot. Let's see. Same thing with this one. Thin on one side, thick, thin on one side, middle, and then thin on that side. Boom. And let's see. Wow, it's been like 40 minutes already. Okay. So, hopefully you guys are still watching. But little tiny details that you can do as well. I'm going to show you guys the shapes, and then I'm going to fast forward this video. And then I will make a new video for the actual finishing, okay? For the actual process of coloring the image. So when it comes down to details like this, you would just, instead of making a stroke, you would make a fill. And then just go around and just make the shape. Super simple. This is how you would do the highlights. This is how you would do the different parts of it too. Okay. Alright, so let's say that we did have everything already set and done, right? We'll worry about the thick to thins for that, I'll worry about that in a bit. Let's just make a copy of all this. So you would make a copy of it, drag it to one side, then you would select it all, and see how it's question marks? It's question marks because it's two different things. It's a stroke and and shapes, and neither one of them, no, they're not all the same. So we're going to go to Object, Expand Appearance, and what that's going to make, it's going to take, we're going to do it twice. Don't ask why, it's just, this is what pops up. Click it twice, and then you can see it went from being a line, I'll do it again, Expand Appearance, it takes it into everything's now a shape, right? So if you wanted to edit it, it's going to give you the shapes on both sides. And then you select it all again, and then with your little Pathfinder tool, without explaining too much about it, this one is called Unite, so it's just going to take all those shapes that you made and then just makes them into one single shape. So now you have just one single piece of illustration, right? So you can, now for coloring, and I'll go into detail with this later, but you can just select one big shape select the color that you want it. Make sure to, like, it's going to be in the front at first. You can right click, arrange, send to back. Make sure that it's in the back. And we're going to select the black line, then shift, select your back color, and you're going to click this button called trim. Boom. It doesn't seem like anything happened, right? It still looks the same. It's all grouped up though. Now if you go into your white arrow tool and select outside of it and delete, there's some open areas here because we didn't detail this. But you can just select the areas that don't need color and delete them. And at this point you can also go in and select the different areas and color pick them with your original image. Well, this one is this one, this one is this color, these two are white. And that is a very general idea of how you would go ahead and do that. And then, for example, we didn't do the highlights for these, right? So you would just select the white color and then do the highlights with a shape. And then you just detail it like that, back and forth, back and forth. Okay? So that is going to be it for right now. I'm going to fast forward the way that I'm going to finish this. It's getting almost a 50-minute video. I am very sorry for it being this long, but for something like this, it's kind of necessary because you need to be able to know how everything's done. Look forward to the coloring video. Maybe I'll just record it right after this and then I'll just save it for later. But maybe I'll just do it with a different illustration that's a little bit more complex. Alright guys, thank you so much for everything. You guys are always great. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. I know they're a little bit longer than probably most tutorial videos that you see on YouTube, but I promise I'm just doing them just so you guys can actually see me going about the process of drawing, and so you guys can get an understanding of what is required, how it's done, instead of just getting a fast forward video with no actual idea of exactly what it takes to get it done. Alright guys, thank you again. Please check out my other videos if you guys enjoyed this one. Click subscribe if you guys feel like you like it, and leave a like, leave a comment with stuff that you guys want to see. Follow me on Instagram if you guys want. It's at Rodgon the artist, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.